You may come back whenever you wish. Ghani was disgusted and tired of the uncertainty pertaining to the proposed left for Poona that day. Meher Baba was not seeing any of his followers in Karachi, but one day, curiously, Sarosh's older brother, Dinshaw Kaikhushru Irani, who had recently moved to Karachi, did come and casually talk with the master for 2 hours, though he was not a devotee. Naval Talati was instructed to inquire about obtaining passports to Bombay for Meher Baba and the men. When he went to the Persian Consul to sign the passports on behalf of Baba and the mandali, the consul casually told him, "Except for Meher Baba, all the others must come in person and sign the papers in my presence before I will endorse their passports. Meher Baba's presence is not necessary because he recently came to see me and told me he would send his passport with someone for my signature, to which I agreed." This strange incident occurred on November 17, 1923, while Meher Baba was in Karachi. When the mandali were informed of this through Vajifdar's letter, they were greatly surprised, since the master had been out of Bombay for a month and a half and had never been to the Persian Consul. After a few days, all the mandali were employed in Karachi except Ramju, and Baba ordered him to sweep the entire bungalow every day until he found a job. After attending to this work in the morning, Ramju was ordered to go out in search of employment. No one knew that the master had a different plan and was conspiring with Bailey to carry it out. On the morning of the 22nd of November, he told the mandali, "Now we should all leave at once to Poona." Without further explanations, preparations were made in a mad rush. Everything was packed up, and all boarded the steamship SS Vita the same afternoon. Thus, instead of staying in Karachi for 2 months, within 7 days their stay at Halt Ho came to an abrupt end. During his stay in Karachi, the master kept himself aloof, and had even forbidden Pilamai to come and see him, and she was naturally feeling despondent and anxious, knowing that Baba was so nearby. Pilamai suffered a profound longing to see him, but on the last day before departing, Baba went to her home and put her mind and heart at ease with his benevolent, smiling presence. Bauji, prose. Such times of separation were meant to create more longing in those already broken-hearted. Poetry by Bauji. Bailey had booked the upper deck for Baba and the men. While on board, Baba took the men to diligently clean rice during the day. Throughout the night, each man had the duty of night watch for 1 hour. Due to fiercely blowing winds, they were very cold on the upper deck, and their muscles ached and became stiff. It was a dreadful trip. Ramju's family was descended from the Kutch tribe, or the Kutch tribe. When the boat anchored at Kutch Manvi, Ramju saw the land of his forefathers for the first time. Ghani, who had somehow reconciled with Baba and had not gone to Poona, noticed that Ramju was in a sentimental mood and mischievously instigated a prank on him. Ghani persuaded Baba to tell Ramju to tie a piece of cloth on his back in typical Kutchi fashion, and talk with the Kutchis boarding the ship in their native tongue. About 800 passengers boarded the ship, and amidst this bustle, the men watched from the upper deck as Ramju went from one Kutchi to the next, trying to set up and start up a conversation. However, not one person paid any attention to Ramju. The mandali and Baba heartily enjoyed the humorous scene. On November 23rd at 12:30 p.m., the ship passed Dwarka, and at 4:30 p.m. it docked at Porbandar. A Parsi named Kandawala, who was an acquaintance of Bailey's, was also on board, and casually began questioning the mandali about themselves, to which they replied as best as they could. But a month later they found out Kandawala had published distorted and misleading accounts in various Parsi papers, to the effect that when he was engaged in talking with his disciples, Meher Baba was suspiciously actually the master was engaged in writing instructions for the mandali to follow later on, and was dictating a few points for correspondence. Thus, due to the publication of Kandawala's false reports in different newspapers, A great misunderstanding and antagonism against Meher Baba was created among the Parsi and Irani communities. The master himself wondered this opposition, so that only those genuinely worthy souls would come to him and remain dedicated to his cause. And amidst such opposition, it happened that way. Of those select few who did come to the master, their love, renunciation, and obedience to his orders were inspiring. It was only years later, when people gradually came to know the facts about who Meher Baba was, that their misunderstanding cleared up.
Before we started this, about how people in the beginning.
It's okay. It's okay to talk like that. That's what's good about the discussion.
What I was talking earlier was how people, when they first came in contact with Baba, did not really have that love and devotion. And then later on, it took many years. It was only years later, you just read, when people gradually came to know the facts about who Meher Baba was, that their misunderstanding cleared up.
And also, isn't it a fact at that time, I don't think this kind of, was that spiritual climate still so fiery in the world or in India? Was Baba somewhat new, or has India always been a land of supercharged
It's always been that way, because remember, we had other masters there, like Sai Baba and Upasni Maharaj, who had a major following. So, because Baba was still a young man, he was about 30 years old or so. To continue, reaching Bombay on November 24th, Meher Baba told the mandali, "I will be in strict seclusion without letting any of you, except a select few, know where I am. You will not know where I will be, so it is better if you will all go back to your homes during the period of my seclusion." Soon after, according to Baba's wish, Nervous, Padri, and Slamson stayed in Bombay. Adi and Masaji went to Ahmednagar, while Baidul and Bairamji went to Poona. Bairamji alone knew of Meher Baba's intentions and went to Poona for the sole purpose of arranging things. The master with Ghani, Gustadji, and Ramju left for Lonavala by train. At the Bombay station, Ghani's father happened to be waiting for the same train on the platform, and it proved an awkward moment because Baba's journey was to be kept secret. With tact, before the old man had seen Baba, Ramju led him into another compartment well away from the group. Baba and Gustadji detrained at Khandala, so those in Lonavala would not know of his arrival. He instructed Ghani and Ramju to continue to Lonavala and to bring a car back for him. Ghani and Ramju borrowed Abdul Tayyab's car and told the gardener to clean the bungalow at Valvan. They then proceeded to Khandala, and halfway there met Baba and Gustadji coming on foot to Lonavala. They all drove to the bungalow, but on the way, Dr. Bhiwalkar happened to notice them. Baba had the car stop and strongly told Dr. Bhiwalkar not to inform anyone about his arrival in Lonavala. Baba stayed in Valvan and inspected different proposed sites for his seclusion, but did not approve of any. Finally, after finding a place that satisfied him, he said, "If this bungalow can be given free for a month or two, I will remain here in seclusion. But neither Ghani, Ramju, nor anyone else should come to me. Only Gustadji will be with me." Abdul Tayyab went to Bombay to persuade the bungalow's owner to loan it free of charge. Meanwhile, Baba expressed his wish to Ghani. Complained to him, "Your constant changes frighten me. Why don't you chalk out a definite plan and then stick to it?" Baba replied, "The very fact of these frequent changes is testimony to my being changeless. My plans are always definite, and there is no room for the slightest deviation. What you see as change is the very body of a fixed plan. an inseparable part of a definite plan. Soon after, Abdul Tayyab's telegram from Bombay was received, stating that the bungalow at Valban was not available as the owner intended to use it himself. On November 29th, Baba sent for Wajifdar from Bombay and after talking with him in private, made him immediately return. Thereafter, Baba proceeded to the station by car, well before the train's arrival, and remained seated in the car until it was time for departure. But the driver had informed his family about Meher Baba's arrival, and soon a crowd gathered near the car. The presence of the crowd disturbed him, so he entered the train. Baba had called only Papa Mian, Abdul Tayyab, and Dr. Biwalkar to the station, but due to the throng around the compartment, they could not even see him. Amidst the confusion, Baba and Gustaji departed at 8:30 p.m. for an unknown destination, leaving Ghani and Ramju guessing where they were headed. They arrived in Poona, where Behramji joined them. The next morning, Baba took a train to Sholapur with Gustaji and Behramji, while even the devotees in Poona did not know of his presence. The third-class compartment was packed, and with great difficulty they managed to find space to sit. Behramji was dozing, and Baba asked him, "Do you feel sleepy?" Behramji nodded in the affirmative. Baba then pushed several people aside and made room for Behramji to lie down. When he was about to fall asleep, however, Baba shook him. Behramji could hardly open his eyes, but heard himself being scathingly addressed, "Don't you feel ashamed to sleep when I'm sitting here wide awake? How can you feel like sleeping? Have some thought for me." Baba went on abusing and teasing him until Behramji became so angry that his sleepiness disappeared. At midnight, Baba, Behramji, and Gustaji arrived in Sholapur. Being in peculiar attire and carrying a stove, cooking utensils, and a lantern, they were interrogated by a suspicious police officer. Gustaji told him the facts, but the policeman called the railway ticket collector and asked for their tickets. Gustaji replied that he would hand over the tickets when they left the station's exit gate, according to the rules. To avoid a quarrel, Baba told Gustaji to accompany him to the bathroom, but the police officer followed them and started a fight with Gustaji. The station master appeared as Baba came out of the toilet. Baba glanced at him, and the station master rudely told him, "This lavatory is only to be used by first and second class passengers." There Baba pointed overhead to the sign which read "Gentlemen," and politely asked, "Where is there any indication about first and second class passengers? This toilet is for gentlemen, and I am a gentleman, sir." At this, the station master was abashed and began to think he was not dealing with an ordinary traveler. He treated the stranger with respect and became amiable. Later, on the station platform, Baba asked Behramji to spread their beddings on the ground in front of the station. The area was full of debris. Only after sweeping it did Behramji spread out their blankets. After a short while, they happened to see a Parsi guard, and Gustaji was told to request him to arrange some other place where they could sleep. And after consulting the same station master, they were allowed to pass the night in the first-class waiting room. The station master even personally made certain they were comfortable. Despite there being empty benches in the waiting room, Baba spread his blanket on the floor. The station master was deeply impressed by this wondrous fakir, and his heart sensed the divinity hidden behind his garb. Finding the station master taking an interest in these three strange men, the police officer stood at a distance watching them. By the time they went to bed, it was 3 a.m. They had barely slept 2 hours when Baba awakened them at 5 o'clock. Gustaji and Behramji had no choice but to get up. Behramji was sent to find a place where they could have breakfast, as they had not eaten anything since leaving Poona 18 hours earlier. He found a poor Muslim restaurant near the station. However, it was horribly unkempt and full of flies. Baba did not touch his tea, but Gustaji and Behramji, who were hungry, managed to swallow theirs and had some bread and butter. They then hired a tonga and toured the city of Sholapur. In one area, a large fair was being held in honor of a local deceased saint. They roamed about the town until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, despite the hot sun, and then finally went to the dak bungalow. A poor servant was asked to cook rice and dal for Behramji and Gustaji, and Behramji went to bring milk for Baba. But in spite of his efforts for an hour, Behramji was not able to find any milk for sale. He returned empty-handed at 2 p.m. and told Baba that milk was not available in the afternoon. It was only sold in the morning and evening. Baba was upset and threatened, "If you don't find me some milk by 3 o'clock, I will not take food for 36 hours. So Behramji again left and luckily met a milkman who agreed to sell him milk at the exorbitant rate of 1 rupee per seer. It's a weight measure. Behramji was in too much of a hurry to quibble over the price and agreed. The man's buffalo was grazing and he had to send his son to bring it. Behramji then returned to the dak bungalow, leaving the milk pot with the man and instructing him to send it to the bungalow as soon as possible. He assured Baba that milk was on the way, but instead of being pleased, Baba became very upset with him for leaving the milk pot with the man. Fearful that the man would not turn up by 3, Behramji became worried. However, the man did bring the milk and Behramji was able to relax. Baba drank a little while Gustaji and Behramji ate lunch. Baba then told them, "From today I will take either milk, fruit juice, or tea once every 24 hours. And you both are to eat only once every 36 hours. They arrived at the station at 5 p.m. on November 30th and bought tickets for Akolner, near Ahmednagar. Except for 9 annas in coins and a 5 rupee note, enough to purchase their tickets, all of their money was spent. The ticket clerk, though, mistook the note for a 10 rupee one and returned 5 rupees and 9 annas to them. But Baba told Behramji to return the 5 rupees mistakenly given. Catching the night train, they left Sholapur and reached Dhond at 4 in the morning, where they changed trains for Manmad, which is a big train junction, both of these. For 2 nights they had no sleep and were exhausted. As soon as they had arranged their luggage in the compartment, the ticket collector came and told them to vacate it as it was reserved for military personnel only. An unpleasant quarrel ensued, but Baba asked Gustaji to move to another compartment. By the time they completed carrying some luggage to the other compartment, the train was in motion, and they only finished transferring everything as the train pulled into Visapur station. Continuing on, Baba and Gustaji got off at Akolner, while to Ahmednagar and informed Rustam and no one else about his presence in the vicinity. Baba and Gustaji looked at several places for the quiet seclusion in Akolner, but failed to find a suitable spot. In the afternoon, they bought milk from a Muslim lad named Ismail and prepared tea. Behramji returned from Ahmednagar in the evening with Rustam, who brought food for their dinner. Again, they searched for an appropriate place of seclusion, and Baba finally selected a piece of land belonging to a retired Brahmin station master. The Brahmin agreed to rent the place, supposedly for a sick man to recuperate his health, and Rustam went back to Ahmednagar to bring a small tent. Meanwhile, Baba, with Behramji and Gustaji keeping watch, spent the night on the stone platform of the Akolnars railway station. The next day, December 2nd, Rustam returned with the tent and food. The tent was set up on the spot selected, but Baba decided that they should sleep in the open air, though the night was cold. It was bitter cold by early morning, and wood was collected to start a fire. After breakfast, Baba expressed that he was not pleased with the location and decided to return to Meherabad. They arrived in Ahmednagar during the evening. Baba with Behramji and Ismail, the boy to whom the master had taken a liking, began walking beside the railway tracks, and arrived at Meherabad late at night, staying in the post office building. Baba walked the 6 miles to Meherabad speedily and with apparent joy, in spite of his prolonged fast. Gustaji arrived later with the luggage in a bullock cart. The Arangao villagers had no idea of Meher Baba's return. Spreading out their beddings, they slept on the open post office veranda. At midnight there was a sudden heavy downpour of rain. The sky was laced with thunder and lightning. If they had stayed in Akolnar, the small tent would not have withstood the storm. This shower was also quite unseasonal, occurring so late in the year. The blessing of rain seemed to be welcoming him back to Meherabad after his 6-month absence.
To whatever place Meher Baba would travel, and for whatever reason, he always did so for his inner work, for the universe. He never stayed a moment longer than necessary in any place. No sooner was his work accomplished, he would immediately leave on one pretext or another, even though the place might seem very convenient and comfortable. Meher Baba and the mandali would camp beneath a tree or stay in a palace, but wherever he traveled, it was only for his work, and as soon as the work was completed, no matter what his planned itinerary might be, he had to leave. Even if Meher Baba traveled to distant places, he would move on within a short time after his inner work was finished. Not one of his movements was without purpose. The mandali knew the master was going somewhere for his work, but no one at the time could understand what inner or spiritual work he was doing. Yet it was always being done to have an impact upon the whole world. The mandali saw Meher Baba breathing, but his every breath would touch all animate and inanimate things in creation. But who saw this? His universal work is totally distinct. It was not for humanity alone, but for the benefit of all things in all universes. His prolonged fasts and seclusions were not for himself. He was, in his own way, inwardly worshipping the whole creation. People worship God, and God in human form worships all life, animate and inanimate. Meher Baba's every breath was an offer of worship to the world, and his every action was his creation. The perfect one has nothing left to achieve. His universal life in the world is his dedication of sacrifice to those still imperfect. The Purush, the perfect man who holds all knowledge, finds the powers in the universe rolling at his feet. Bhal Kulshari. It was dark in the early hours of the morning when Meher Baba sent Behramji to bring milk from Arangaon village. Recognizing him, the local milkman was surprised. Behramji quickly explained that he had come to Meherabad alone and would soon return after a few days. Even water from the well was drawn in the dark so that no one would suspect Meher Baba's presence there. For the same reason, the master kept himself confined inside the post office building. Baba then directed Gustaji and Behramji to put up the tent inside the post office, but it was difficult due to the stone walls and flooring. The work took longer than expected, and Baba became impatient with the delay. He brusquely told them to hurry up. Both were perspiring and somehow managed to raise it. Baba then closed the door and remained inside the tent the whole day. Gustaji and Baramji then cooked rice and dal and ate their one daily meal. Adi came with butter the next night. He was the second person besides Rustam who was told of Meher Baba's return. After 2 or 3 days, Adi began bringing their daily food, thereby relieving Baramji and Gustaji from the bother of cooking, as ordered by Baba. They were still eating only once every 24 hours, while he continued fasting on liquids. Baba stayed secluded inside the post office, but would go outside at night to urinate or for a drink of water. In the dark hours before dawn, Gustaji and Baramji would fill the water pots, and they too would keep themselves hidden inside during the day. Thus, for some days, no one knew of the master's presence in Mehrabad. After a week, Gulmai was permitted to come see him with her son Adi. During the last week of December 1923, Meher Baba went to Poona for a couple of days and stayed at Sadashiv Patel's house in Kasba Peth. In a splendid mood, Baba held his largest public darshan. Hundreds of people came for his blessing. Babu Rao brought an Anglo-Indian religious seeker named Louis Charles Nellams. At the moment of seeing Meher Baba, Nellams, a Christian by faith, was stunned and thought he was beholding Jesus Christ himself. He became speechless as he gazed at Meher Baba. Tears welled up in his eyes. He stood before Baba for a long time, then bowed and took his darshan. Within moments, his heart accepted Meher Baba as his Lord with full faith and love. After the darshan program, the master met with Nellams in private and asked him what he wanted. Nellams replied, "I have seen you as the Christ. I want to be at your feet forever." Meher Baba consoled him, telling Nellams he would send for him at the appropriate time, but until then he should remain in Poona. Soon after, Baba returned to Mehrabad without anyone in Arangan or Ahmednagar being the wiser. No one in Poona knew where he was residing either. Baba continued his fast, and from the 27th of December, he extended the period for drinking some liquid from every 34 hours to once every 40 hours. For drinking some liquid from once every 34 hours to once every 40 hours. On December 31st, 1923, Baba came out of seclusion and left Mehrabad for Bombay with Baramji and Gustaji, arriving that evening. He had written Ghani and Ramju, telling them to meet him on the railway platform at Lanalva station. Because of continuous fasting, Baba's usual, what he had undergone in seclusion had broken down his physical constitution. He concluded one recent letter by stating, "I am growing weaker day by day. Last night was terrible, and this morning I am left a physical wreck. While writing this, my hands are shaking." Merwan. Naturally, Ghani and Ramju were alarmed when they heard of his condition. After arriving in Lanalva, Baba drank hot cocoa, which they had brought. As indicated in his letter, they found him looking pale and of delicate health. His fasting had reduced him to a skeleton. But despite his physical suffering, both observed Baba to be in quite a cheerful mood. With his consent, Ramju and Ghani accompanied him on the train to Kandala. In Bombay, while still maintaining seclusion, Baba stayed in a room located in the Barucha building, which Baljifar had rented according to previous instruction. At the Barucha building on January 1st, 1924, Baba curtailed the period of fasting from 40 hours to 24 hours and would take only a sherbet-flavored drink. At this time, Mera J. Irani was still staying in Sikori, and Khorshid was now with her as her friend and companion. After settling in Bombay, Baba sent Gulmai to Sikori to bring both ladies to be with him. Baba then housed Mera and Khurshid and Khurshid's parents in the Irani mansion. The Purush had his Prakruti beside him. Prakruti beside him. The perfect man held the original source of all knowledge. The pure image of the beloved's heart, Mera, the mirror of creation, began singing the original song throughout the garden of existence, flowering with God's love. Babaji.
Prakriti is Maya.
Maya. The substance.
The illusion. It's Purush mixed with Prakriti that creates creation. So you see, Baba represents God. Purush is man, Adam. And Mera represents Prakriti, Maya.
I see.
So you need both.
Yes. Mera's mother, Daulat, was also with her in the Irani mansion, and Mera and Khurshid would daily come to the Barucha building for his darshan. One day Baba, accompanied by Gustaji, visited the ladies at the Irani mansion and asked Mera and Khurshid to sing a favorite song. Khurshid sang one about Krishna, but Mera felt too shy. So Baba turned to Gustaji, who sang the song entitled, "O God, please listen to me." One melancholy day, Meher Baba went for a walk with Naval Talati to Chowpatty Beach. Baba's gaze happened to fall on a man sitting in a pensive mood, and he asked Naval, "Who is that person?" Surprised, Naval replied, "Baba, how should I know? Thousands come here every day. He might be anyone." Baba said, "Go and ask him his name and find out what he is thinking." Naval hesitated, saying, "What do we have to do with him? But if you insist, I will inquire." Baba and Naval walked nearer to the stranger, and Naval caught his attention. The man raised his sad eyes and asked, "What do you want?" Baba answered, laughing, "We don't want anything." The man queried, "Then why are you disturbing me?" Baba replied, "To tell you that only bliss and joy are destined for you." Astonished, the man replied, "Joy? Am I not so lucky? Happiness is not part of my life." "Joy, I am not so lucky. Happiness is not part of my life. All my happiness is gone away." In a serious tone, Baba explained, "Your false idea of real bliss. It will be removed to find true joy, so why be miserable and unhappy?" Hearing this, the man was puzzled and wondered, "Who is this man who is?" Baba then asked, "Who are you?" Baba only smiled, but his smile was a turning point in the man's life. As he looked at Baba, he was roused from his painful reverie from his painful reverie, and freed from the sorrow gripping his heart. Naval told him about Meher Baba, who then said, "You have a very important part to play in my cinema." At this point, the man disclosed, "I too have a cinema. I am the owner." Baba burst out laughing and said, "I am talking about the universal cinema. By coming to me, you will find out what that is. But what I want to tell you is that good luck is in store for you, and you should not feel dejected." Naval then gave him Baba's address, and they left. Reading the address, the man's distress dissolved into rays of hope. Who was this man sitting so lonely along the beach? He was a man so distraught that he was about to commit suicide by drowning himself into the sea. Why? He once had a very beautiful wife whom he loved most dearly. He was completely devoted to her and sacrificed much for her happiness and comfort. Although he had complied with her every wish, she left him for another man, his best friend. It nearly drove him insane, and he could no longer bear his misery. That day he had come to the shores of Chowpatty Beach to end his life. People commit suicide every day, but the Savior did not allow this suicide to happen. On the pretext of taking a stroll, he had come to the seashore and lifted the man's heart from the pit of despair. At that moment, the man was given a new life and eventually proved an invaluable medium for the Master's work. He was to become Meher Baba's first secretary, Chanji.
Feram Rose Hormusji Dada Chanji was born in Bombay on November 23, 1892. Educated in Parsi schools in Bombay, he went to college for a year in Karachi and then studied journalism. He also knew shorthand and typing, later working for Greaves Cotton Company in Bombay during 1912. After 4 years during World War I, he enlisted as a journalist on the hospital ship Takada. After the war, he worked at various jobs as a salesman, accountant, and correspondent with different Bombay companies. He also worked as an advertiser and manager of movie theaters and eventually owned one cinema in partnership, the Madeleine Theater on Grant Road. His partner was his best friend, who had an affair with his wife. The affair led to a divorce, which was quite scandalous in the Parsi community. Dada Chanji, as he was called, was then 31 years old, and soon after the incident at Chowpatty Beach, began visiting Meher Baba regularly. The master during this period nicknamed him Chanji. Due to Chanji's influence, his entire Parsi family, as well as numerous other Parsis and Iranis in Bombay, would eventually devote their lives to Meher Baba's cause. After some years, Chanji was reconciled to the turn of events in his marriage, which had driven him to despair, because it was his despair that had led Meher Baba to save him. Chanji was a kind man with a forgiving heart, and he never hated his ex-wife and partner for what had happened. Another early disciple, Ardeshir Khodaram Irani, first met Meher Baba during this time and boldly demanded a felicitation. Meher Baba told him to wait until he was ready, but whenever he would visit, he would pester the master about it. Finally, Baba became annoyed with Ardeshir's naive attitude and said to him, "You really want God realization? The whole ocean will come in your cup. But if your cup breaks, I am not responsible." Ardeshir knew Baba meant that he would drop his body if he attained realization, and was shocked by the thought of dying. From that day on, he did not speak of realization. Another of the early mandali was Kaikhushru Irani Afsari, known as Rao Sahib. Rao Sahib was an Irani who had come to know of Meher Baba from two fellow Persians, Behramji and Ardeshir. In 1922, he had once come to Manzil-e-Mim for the master's darshan, but at that time Baba was not seeing anyone, and Rao Sahib had to return. He was bitterly disappointed, thinking, "What is the use of this darbar, divine court, in which no one's worth is recognized? I am a sincere seeker of truth, but still Meher Baba refuses me his darshan." He resolved never to approach Meher Baba again, and his mind harbored this grudge for a long time. One night the master appeared in Rao Sahib's dream and said, "In the court of a Sadguru, one should lead a dog's life. Even if you are thrown out, you should go again and again, begging to find the entrance. This dream made Rao Sahib restless. In 1924, he met Baidul, who brought him to Baba at the Bharucha building. Baba asked him, "What do you want?" Rao Sahib replied, "To remain in your darbar." Baba said, "The time will come when I will call you. Meanwhile, be prepared and keep ready to come to me as soon as I call. I may send for you tomorrow, after a fortnight, or after 4 months. Whenever I call, be prepared to come that very moment." This made Rao Sahib happy, and now he eagerly awaited to enter Meher Baba's court, forgetting his previous complaint. And then we have a beautiful picture in the second half of the page of Meher Baba with disciples in Mehrabad during the late 1920s, with Gustaji, Kodu, known as Sailor, Brother Jal, Beramji, Chagan, Vishnu, Pendu, and Masaji, and Naushirwan Dastu. The rest are workers, and Mehrabad are villagers from Arangaon. During most of January 1924, Meher Baba remained in relative quietude and aloofness. Only Behramji and Gustaji were staying with the master in the Bharucha building. But on January 20th, 1924, Baba called all the men mandali from Poona, Lonavala, and Ahmednagar to Bombay. At the gathering, he told them, "Only those who are willing and ready to dedicate themselves to me fully for an indefinite period will be able to stay with me." Calling Ghani and Ramju aside in private, Baba said, "Whatever hopes and promises I held out to you to be fulfilled by February 28th, you may now consider them unfulfilled. If you think that the last 2 years with me were a waste of time and in vain, and if you now no longer take me for what you believed me to be for so long, then I can only say, I am sorry and ask your forgiveness. Still, if you wish to, you may do so for only an indefinite period, and without any previous conditions or expectations. However, if you think I've beguiled and deceived you, you are free to express yourselves and rebuke me as you wish." Baba further told them, "If you want, you may keep your connection with me by remaining at home and carrying out your worldly duties, but it can only be done by carrying out my spiritual instructions." For Ghani and Ramju, it was not a question of faith in the Master, and they did not consider their 2 years with him in vain. But for certain family reasons, they decided it was better to remain at home in Lonavala and obey his instructions from there. When informed of their decision, Baba said, "If you trust me, and if you believe that I am the one for whom you have love and faith, then I can definitely say that in this life and in this body, you can be as certain of spiritual awakening as day follows night, whether you remain with me, away from me, or even go against me." Baba then inquired of Ghani and Ramju, "After I return from Persia, I may call you to stay with me for a month or 2. Will you do it? At that time I will explain to both of you about the inner secret, which I promised to explain to only a selected few." Both replied, "We wish to be with you, but allow us to go home when necessary." Baba agreed to this, but added, "From now on, I will not be responsible for anything that has to do with either of you." Meher Baba broke his prolonged fast on January 20th and began taking food once every day. Throughout his life, the mandali were to observe that all of his actions contained hidden significance which affected the lives of everything in creation. Sometimes the reasons for the master's moods, seclusions, or fasts would become apparent, or they would coincide with certain world events which the mandali would come to know of later when they read the newspapers. For example, when Meher Baba was in a bad mood or shouting at someone, the next day they would read of some disaster or natural calamity, such as a train crash, an ocean liner sinking, or a great flood or drought somewhere in the world. In the case of Meher Baba's breaking his fast on January 20th, the next day the Russian communist leader Vladimir Ilyich Lenin was assassinated. 2 days later, Shireen and Aunt Daula, accompanied by Babu Rao, arrived at the Bharucha building from Poona. Finding her son very thin and weak, Shireen rebuked him. "Merwan, why are you starving yourself? Are you mad?" Laughing, he replied, "Mother, the whole world is mad, not I. I am the healer of the mad." His mother remarked, "When you fast like a madman, how can you hope to help the man?" "I have to fast in order to make them well." "Forget about the mad and go on eating," his mother exclaimed. "To cure them, I have taken birth through your womb. If I don't play my part, your name will be cursed throughout history." Hearing this, Shireen could not suppress a smile. On the 27th of January, a Qawwali program was held in the Manzil-e-Mim compound, featuring the famous singer Yasin. The program lasted throughout the day, and Baba thoroughly enjoyed the singing. Wajiftar brought food from the Irani mansion, which Baba fasted all day on January 31st, 1924. He had said that from the 1st of February he would start eating regularly, 3 times a day. But again he changed his mind and continued eating only one meal every 24 hours. During January, Baba's elder brother Jamshed wrote regarding Hazrat Baba Jan's recent ill health and restless mood. Baba Jan was usually of radiant and vibrant health, despite her age of well over 100 years. Strangely enough, Meher Baba's delicate health seemed to coincide with Baba Jan's health in Poona. The mandali observed that many of their symptoms were similar, and that as long as Baba Jan did not recover, Meher Baba's health also did not improve. The regal master Sadguru Narayan Maharaj, whom most of the mandali had only heard of, was spiritual teacher, or they're learning yoga.
They only eat once a day?
Once a day.
Yeah.
One of my best friends who lives in Bombay, he eats
What
once
meal
a day.
do they eat?
Probably dinner or lunch. She doesn't eat, not eat, they'll eat coffee or tea in the morning, but not solid food.
Ah.
They'll probably eat one meal a day, and that's for their health or whatever their teacher has told them. Not necessarily a spiritual teacher, but if they're studying a spiritual path. Okay, the regal master Sadguru Narayan Maharaj, whom most of the mandali had only heard of, was visiting Bombay. On February 2nd, Meher Baba sent Gustadji and some of the men for Narayan's darshan. This was the first occasion that some of the mandali met the Hindu master. When Gustaji entered the hall and approached Narayan, the Sadguru, and his circle of rich followers and Maharajas humbly stood up, giving the clear impression that they were paying respect to Meher Baba through Gustaji. There's a photograph on the bottom half of the page, the regal Sadguru Narayan Maharaj holding a public darshan in India. To his sides are Maharajas and at his feet Brahmin priests. During the 1920s, Mahatma Gandhi emerged as the political leader of India. The initial contact with Gandhi occurred when Meher Baba had been in Karachi during November 1923. At that time, he remarked to the mandali, "Gandhi will be freed from prison soon." And as foretold by Baba, on the 5th of February 1924, Mahatma Gandhi was released from jail. Baba sent a letter to Rustam in Ahmednagar telling him to send a Gujarati copy of Upasni Maharaj's biography to Gandhi, and to inform him about the severe austerities and fasts which Maharaj had undergone. Rustam did so, and the result of this first contact was evident later. There's a photograph of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Indian political leader known as Mahatma, great soul. Atma means the soul, Maha means great, who met Avatar Meher Baba and Sadguru Upasni Maharaj. It is not known if Gandhi met Sadguru Narayan Maharaj, but he must have heard of him.
Because of Meher Baba's upcoming visit to Persia, scheduled for February 14th, his 30th birthday was celebrated on Tuesday, February 12th, instead of 8th, according to the Zoroastrian calendar. A large canopy was erected, and many followers arrived from different places. The mandali were so busy that they did not even have time for morning tea. The pavilion and Meher Baba was profusely garlanded. The music and singing entertainments were also a grand success. As these ceremonies were taking place, there was some confusion regarding bringing the food from Irani mansion. Meher Baba stopped the program and, openly irritated, walked to the house and lifted the big vessels of food on his shoulders, bringing them to Barucha building himself. Despite the mandali's plea to let them carry the pots of food, Baba refused and irritably waved them away. Walking along the street, the master did the work of a humble coolie on his own birthday. The guests who saw him carrying the heavy load were astonished. Munshi Rahim and other Muslim followers had left Barucha building, afraid that the master's mood had been irreparably spoiled. But a short time later, Baba rode to Munshi's house along Charni Road in a car and brought them back. The atmosphere returned to normal as everyone joyfully partook of Meher Baba's birthday feast. That afternoon, the master delivered a discourse on spirituality to those who had come to the celebration. One Irani man was so impressed by the discourse that he promised to stop drinking liquor and give up other bad habits, vowing to remain only on bread and water. Several days later, when Baba came to know of this, he prevailed upon the man to resume his regular diet except liquor. Upasni Maharaj had imprisoned himself inside a bamboo cage for the past year, but news came from Sikori that Maharaj had come out of the cage on February 12th, the same day on which Meher Baba's birthday was observed. It was, therefore, a day doubly joyous, that Meher Baba's spoiled mood may have had some inner connection with Maharaja's sudden activity in Sikori. The cage-limiting Maharaj secretly held an ocean of bliss. Who saw that ocean released in honor of Merwan's birth? From Babaji. Meher Baba had been planning the trip to Persia for some weeks. On January 29, some of the men mandali had gone to the Persian Consul with their respective passports. The consul asked them questions in Persian, and one of the men replied in Persian, "I am sorry, sir, but we don't speak Persian." To hear this reply was an amusing surprise to the consul, who unhesitatingly endorsed everyone's passport. Afterward, Baba discussed their upcoming trip and decided that they should proceed to Iran via Bandar Abbas instead of Baghdad, because travel expenses would be less costly by that route. Following this decision, an addendum to the official agreement was made on February 15th and signed by the mandali on stamped paper. It read, "We, the undersigned, hereby declare and agree that we are going to Persia of our own free will and accord. We further hold ourselves responsible for any mishap that may occur, whether physical, mental, or financial, under any circumstances. That is, Meher Baba is in no way responsible for any consequences of the journey, or otherwise, during the time we are with him." The route was changed again, however, and the decision was made to travel through Baghdad. It was also determined that only 8 were to accompany Baba. 8 men were to accompany Baba. The other mandali were to remain at their respective homes and were to rejoin him after his return. Naval Talati had already purchased the steamship tickets via Bandar Abbas. It proved to be a difficult task for him to have them changed, however. He was able to do so without incurring any extra expense, but the extra cost of sending telegrams to different people in Persia turned out to be tremendous. While staying in the Barucha building, Baba ordered the mandali to fast for 24 hours on 3 occasions. His birthday was celebrated again on Tuesday, February 19th, since the trip to Persia had been postponed one more time from the 14th to the 22nd of February. On February 22nd, Meher Baba awakened the mandali unexpectedly at 3 a.m. and asked they or not. Behramji had been suffering from fever for several days, and all favored postponing the trip. But Baba wanted to leave and demanded, "We must go today, so get ready." The luggage was dispatched to the docks in a bullock cart, and all left in great haste. They boarded the SS Varela at 7:30 a.m. and departed from Bombay harbor at 9:30. Meher Baba was returning to the land of his ancestors and appeared excited about seeing Persia. To console those who were not going with him, he lovingly embraced each one. Some felt he was taking their very hearts away with him, and they wept as he waved goodbye. With the master were 8 men mandali: Adi Irani, Baidul, Behramji, Gustaji, Masaji, Nervous, Padri, and Vajifdar. In the interim, Ghani, Abdur Rahman Barsop, Ramju, and Rustam Irani were to await Baba's return at their homes. His mother, Shireen Gulmai, and other ladies, along with the mandali from Kasba Peth, also came to see them off, as instructed by Baba. Daulat and Mera Irani returned to their home in Poona. Settled on board the ship, Masaji cooked for the mandali and prepared 1 vegetable dish for Baba. Their meals were simple, consisting of a potato dish, fresh bread, and tea. Behramji was still not well, and the constant rocking of the ship in the waves worsened his condition. Adi, too, suffered from seasickness and could not control his vomiting. Baba would nurse Adi and Behramji, urging them to try to eat. It was a difficult journey. When the boat docked at Karachi for a brief period, Pilamai and other devotees was present with flowers and food, and Meher Baba was received with great reverence. Behramji and Adi remained indisposed, for they could not control their vomiting. Later on board the ship, there was a discussion between 2 sects of Muslims, the Shiites and the Sunnis, going back to the 600 footnote. All Muslims believe that there is but one God, and that Muhammad is his prophet, the chosen one, for the divine revelations that resulted in the Quran. But when Prophet Muhammad died in 632 A.D., he left no obvious successor to serve as Iman. I am, Imam, the Islamic term for spiritual leader. Most of his followers accepted Abu Bakr, his father-in-law, as Imam. A few, however, were convinced that Muhammad had designated as his successor Ali, the husband of his daughter Fatima. In time, the former group favoring Abu Bakr called themselves Sunnis. Today, they account for about 90% of the world's 800 million Muslims. The minority following splintered into subsects who believed the leadership would derive from descendants of Ali and Fatima. They were, and are collectively known as Shi'atu Ali, the party of Ali, or more simply, Shiites. Wow.
Shiites means one who disagrees.
Ah.
So they broke away from the original faith, and most of the Shiites are the people now who dwell in Iran.
There's not that many, apparently, according to this.
The Sunnis are mostly the ones who live
The whole world.
in Saudi Arabia, and so they follow the line. But there is no descendant. Muhammad had a daughter.
A quarrel resulted, and each side began angrily vilifying the other's religious leaders. The irony was that between the opposing groups were two brothers-in-law, one a Shiite and one a Sunni. The Shiite brother-in-law was greatly drawn to Meher Baba, and during the argument turned to him and asked, "To what religion do you belong, sir?" Smiling, Baba replied, "To me, all religions are one." After further conversation with the Master, Baba, that if his sect believed in guru-disciple relationships, he would surely have accepted him as his master. After this, the argument between the brothers-in-law became so heated that they swore they would part company in Baghdad, where they had originally planned to begin their pilgrimage together to Mecca. The sea was calm as the boat steamed into the Persian Gulf, but a shivering cold storm swept over them after leaving the port of Bahrain. By the time they reached the port of Bushehr, Baba, who until then had been quite well, also suffered nausea. Then Vajifdar, too, started feeling nauseous. No sooner had they anchored at Bushehr than a rainstorm broke with crashing thunder. The Persian coolies picked up the group's heavy luggage, and Bayadul tipped them with bread and onions, which they seemed to relish.
Rustam gave somebody the person a little coin.
Oh, yes, right.
A bottle.
I know. And they're funny.
It's the art speaking.
I know. These poor guys, they gave them bread and onions. But it seems like it said the coolies relished the bread and onions. While hauling the luggage, they would utter, "Ya Ali, Ya Ali," in honor of the Almighty, much to the good humor of the mandali amidst the miserable conditions. Meher Baba and the mandali stayed at Gulheim Hussain Lodi's house in Bushehr. Ghulam Hussain Lodi's house in Bushehr. Their baggage was brought by mule, the most common means of transportation in Iran at the time. Nervous promptly brought charcoal and lit the pump stove. Baba warmed himself near it, for he was shivering from the extreme cold. Hearths were lighted to heat the room. Strong winds were blowing, and the cold atmosphere was gloomy and uncongenial. Nervous brought supplies from the market, and Masaji cooked a meal. Water for drinking had to be bought, as there was a great scarcity. But the water which was purchased contained maggots and looked so milky that most people would not even have washed their feet in it. The mandali had to walk to the seashore to wash the cooking utensils. Although the majority of the mandali were unwell, Baba decided to proceed to Shiraz, famous for its gardens and the tomb of Baba's favorite poet, Hafiz. A truck was hired at 400 rupees for the journey to Shiraz. But Padre fell ill the next day with a high fever and felt too weak to travel. When news was brought that a ship had arrived from Baghdad on its way to Bombay, Baba suddenly decided to return to India by that ship. This change of plans shocked the men. He instructed Baidul and Behramji to disembark at Bandar Abbas and proceed to their respective homes in Iran, while the rest of the mandali would disembark at Karachi with him. After only a few days in Persia, they boarded the cargo ship Baroja and left Bushehr. Meher Baba and the mandali would always travel by the lowest class, and accordingly they occupied the deck. The other passengers on board were Arab tribesmen. There was not much room for the passengers because the cargo ship was carrying cows, goats, chickens, donkeys, and horses. The animals' excretions caused a terrible stench. The Arabs daily slaughtered goats and chickens on the deck for their meals, and some were so unhygienic that their habits shocked the men with Baba. On one occasion, an arrogant Arab kicked Nervous's bedding roll, throwing it aside rather than ask him politely to move it. Baba quickly stopped Nervous from confronting the man. On another occasion, one Arab abused his fellow Muslim for not offering namaz or prayer with his face toward the west. However, the next morning the same Arab was seen offering namaz as soon as he was out of bed without first washing his hands and feet, which was customary. On the way to Bandar Abbas, Baba unexpectedly broached the subject of halting there and going back to Persia. Of his idea, he expressed astonishment at their lack of enthusiasm. He wanted all of them to disembark with Baidul and Behramji. But when they reached Bandar Abbas and were about to be ferried to the shore, Padri again had an alarming temperature, so their plan was changed, and only Behramji and Baidul disembarked. The ship stayed anchored for about 2 hours, during which time Padri gradually felt better. 15 minutes before the steamer was to depart, Baba had a ferry boat hired to take them ashore. But again Padre suddenly came down with fever, and it was finally decided definitely to return to India. Arrangements were made to leave Padre in Karachi with Nervous, who was to look after him until he was well enough to travel.
Like in namaz, you have to wash your hands, feet, and your face. They have like places in the mosque where you
do that before you pray.
Yeah, you have to be pure outside, but the main thing is to be pure. That's what Baba stresses. To continue, some Nepalese Gurkhas who came on board the ship had come on board the ship. They were friendly and admired Baba's features. At their casual suggestion to visit Nepal, Baba and the few men departed Bandar Abbas, decided to proceed to Kathmandu. After passing through the ports of Lingay, Henjam Island, and Muscat, the cargo ship reached Karachi during the second week of March 1924. Wajiftar accompanied Nervous and Padri to Pilamai's house. Masaji went to hire a bullock cart to take their baggage to the railway station, for Baba had decided to immediately depart by train to Nepal. A horse tonga was brought instead, and the luggage was taken to the station, where Baba and the men rested in a waiting room. Wajiftar returned at 10 p.m., and they soon went to sleep. Yet some men had to take turns that night to watch by Baba for an hour, as well as to safeguard the luggage against theft. They were carrying sacks of grain and rice with them throughout the journey, and the responsibility of looking after the food fell on Masaji and Wajiftar. In the morning they bathed at the public water tap in the train station. To ensure privacy, they hung curtains of blankets on all 4 sides, making a shower stall around the tap. According to Baba's order, no coolies were to be hired. Therefore, Masaji and Wajiftar had to carry all the luggage onto the train. As was their plight, their belongings weighed heavily and were cumbersome, but they managed to load everything on board in time to catch the Quetta mail train with the assistance of Nervous, who had come to see them off. Later, during the change of trains at Hyderabad in Sindh station, Masaji lost his bedding roll. This mishap resulted in a heated quarrel between Gustadji and him. Baba afterward pacified Masaji by lending his own woolen blanket to him. Vajiftar was assigned the duty of general manager in Bairamji's absence, and he had to purchase their tickets, arrange for the food, and make certain that all the luggage was properly loaded. Along with the headache of being the manager, Vajiftar also had to endure Baba's constant teasing and criticisms. Baba had singled him out for goading, which proved an additional mental burden for Vajiftar. On the way to Nepal, the train stopped at Lucknow, where Baba went to the town to buy new sandals. Not liking any, he returned to the station. He was constantly wearing the calmly woolen coat given by Yeshwant Rao and the sandals made by Kanhoba Rao for some unexplained reason. He would not wear any other coat or sandals. Remember the coat, end of book 1, calmly, thick wool. Stopped at Raxaul on the Nepal frontier, mission to cross the border. They remained in Raxaul and sent telegrams to different government authorities requesting visas to enter the country. They were informed that if they had asked for permission, obtained it because of a religious fair being held at the time in Nepal by a congregation of Tibetan Buddhists. But now that the fair was over, foreign travelers were not allowed inside the country. Only those engaged in business, trade, or some official government work were given consent. Giving up the idea of a journey to Nepal, Baba led the men to visit the tomb of Kabir at Maghar instead, remaining there for 2 days. The renowned poet and perfect master Kabir, who embodies a mixture of Hindu and Muslim qualities, has 2 shrines in Maghar. It is said that when Kabir died, his body transformed into a great lotus flower, which was cut in half and divided among his Muslim and Hindu disciples. Thus he has 2 tombs, one tomb where Hindus worship and another where Muslims pay homage, similar to Sai Baba. Each follower is of the opinion that theirs is the real grave. Baba paid respects to both places. After visiting the shrines dedicated to Kabir, Baba had about 50 poor persons fed in Maghar, which lessened the burden of their grain sacks. All the rest of the surplus provisions which they had carried with them from India for their journey in Persia were distributed among the poor, and the large empty jars were given to the station master. During the stay at Maghar, a conflict arose between some wandering sadhus. These are renunciates. Baba intervened and stopped the quarrel. He explained to them about the way of life they should be leading if they were real sadhus and renounced the ephemeral world. Soon after, Baba and the 4 remaining mandali left Maghar for Kanpur in Tongas and stayed at a dharamshala there. They bathed in the Ganges River and later fed a few more persons along the banks. When they boarded a train at Kanpur, Baba instructed Vajiftar to return to Bombay, Masaji to go to Poona, and Adi and Gustadji to Ahmednagar. Baba told Gustadji and Adi to select a place within a radius of 5 or 6 miles from Sakori, where he could stay with the mandali. The 4 men proceeded to their destinations, and Baba left the train at the Itarsi station alone. It is said that Mayor Baba was so tired that as soon as he had set foot on the station platform, he lay down, resting his head on his bedding. A ticket collector was watching from a distance and became suspicious, shouted, "Arrest that man, he's a ticketless traveler." In an intimidating manner, he approached Baba, who pulled out his ticket and said, "Here is my ticket, sir." At that moment, the man was stunned by the glow he saw on Baba's face. He bowed to him and left Baba alone. For several days, he roamed about Itarsi, contacting saints and perhaps some musts. The full details of his solitary wandering are not known, but it was evident that for his inner work he had stayed behind in Itarsi, and that he wished his movements to be kept secret. This was the only time during Meher Baba's life that he was ever traveling alone without any of the mandali with him. After disappearing for 1 week at the end of March 1924, Baba returned to Meherabad and gathered the mandali once again near him. Why all the effort and changes in journeying to Persia? The Avatar's inner work is on a universal scale, and it is not possible to understand any particular action of his. He has universal mind, and when he thinks of a place or country, the people and things feel the effect, but their thinking or consciousness actually changes as well. But their thinking or consciousness actually changes as well. Thus, his every action brings millions of unseen results. Meher Baba would at times talk to someone about a person in a distant land, but that person listening would not feel that his words were directed at him, and the person far away would feel the effect of Baba's thoughts and words. The extent of the unseen force of his actions can never be imagined or counted. One aspect or perspective of the journeying to Persia and all the changes of plans had to do with the inner work he was doing at that time regarding the Persian people and the country. It could be said that Meher Baba's presence there actually seeded a change in the consciousness of the people. After Meher Baba's visit to Persia, a great change for the better swept over the country. After a year and a half, Reza Khan ascended the throne as the Shah, or king, and the country was for a time greatly benefited by his coming to power. Also, after his journey, the religious hostility and persecution of minorities, such as the Zoroastrians, disappeared. Then, to some extent, brotherhood prevailed as the country gradually began to progress toward modernization. And that comes to the end of the chapter. There is a photograph on this page on the top half of the old Zoroastrian Tower of Silence outside the town of Khurramshahr, Iran, where Meher Baba's grandfather, Mundegar, and father Shahryar worked as caretakers. Remember, Baba's father worked in the Tower of Silence, right, in his Shahryar in Book 1. This is where they bring the dead among the Zoroastrians to be devoured by vultures. Right. Since they believe that all the elements they do not cremate because fire is very sacred to the Zoroastrian people. And also water and earth, so they do not bury them in water or in the earth. True Zoroastrian. That's according to the Zoroastrian faith.
Well, good, and we'll conclude tonight's meeting at page 606. Ota Meher
Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba. Everybody, it's the February 6th, February 6th, and the date is 1997, and this is the Lord Meher meetings at the Avatar Meher Baba Center, Southern California, located in Los Angeles. We're reading the Lord Meher Volume 2, which covers the years 1922 to 1925. This is, of course, by beloved Bal Kalchuri. And we're on page 607, the Gamala Yoga, it's called. The chapter begins. Shows Meher Baba at Meherabad sitting during the 1920s. And the top of the page says hard labor.
Isn't that mean, that thing they carry on their heads, a gamela?
I don't know.
It's a pan that, the road workers use.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it is. That could be.
Hard work.
It's because it says hard work.
Yeah.
During April 1924, the Kasba Peth Mandali, Arjun, Chalhari, Kandaram, Vishnu, and others were called from Poona to stay at Mehrabad. Some of the structures at Mehrabad were in a state of ruin, so Meher Baba assigned to Mandali the work of demolishing them and leveling the ground. For this work, they used gamalas, which are iron, circular-shaped containers used for carrying earth and stones. Thus, the work came to be officially called Gamela Yoga. Right on, Rosalie. During this labor phase, a typical day began at 5 a.m., prayers according to the respective religions, till 7 a.m. From 7 to 8 a.m., breakfast of milkless tea and millet bakri were served. The Gamela Yoga work lasted from 8 to 11 a.m. Due to the hot weather, from 11 to 3 p.m., there was an afternoon recess for bath, lunch, rest, and laundry. From 3 to 4:30 p.m., the men repeated a one-line prayer of different names of God given by the master. From 4:30 to 6 p.m., the men again attended to their various assigned duties. Masaji would cook for most of the Mandali, but Chowdhury was cooking separately for the Hindus. Dinner was at 6 p.m., followed by the men singing an arti, or the master giving a discourse. By 10 p.m., all would retire, probably extremely exhausted.
Awesome.
Those who were physically weak or in poor health had to either draw water from the well and bring it to the post office building, or cook and clean. Baba had instructed that each day they should eat a few almonds to build up their strength. The Gamala Yoga work was quite strenuous. The Mandali had to mix clay to mold chunam or lime bricks, attend to the klin, dig up and carry stones for the construction work, and carry heavy loads of earth. In general, they had to do the work of carpenters and coolies, as well as overseeing the repair work being done on the old buildings. They also had to assist a mason who was constructing a small private room for the master called the Japti. Meher Baba had given the following one-line prayer to be recited by the Mandali every afternoon for an hour and a half. Kuda Paraatma Allah Ahumazad Ram Yazdan Hu. This was to be preceded and followed by the singing of the arti, which he had composed in Gujarati at the toddy shop in Kasba Peth years before. When Meher Baba had first arrived in Arangon during May 1923, the tomb of the Mohammedan saint Gilori Shah had been completed while the saint was still alive. But after Baba left Mehrabad on his journeys, and by the time he returned in March 1924, Gilori Shah had dropped his body. According to the saint's wishes, his funeral procession ended in Mehrabad. When the saint was buried, there was a dispute among his followers as which rites to perform, Hindu or Muslim. But someone at the funeral settled the dispute by quoting what Gilori Shah had once said: "For the fakir, there is no sect or religion." Thus the saint was buried without ceremony, as he had wished. Gilori Shah himself had kept his coffin ready, on which he had inscribed, "He who has died before his death is alive." Gulmai's husband, Kansahib Karushu, paid all the funeral expenses of Gilori Shah. After a year passed, a wooden canopy was built over the saint's marble tomb. During April, the private room for Baba's personal use was constructed within a week. It had been built according to his specifications, and Baba himself had lent a hand in the work, urging that it should be completed as soon as possible. Lord Ram's birthday was celebrated on Sunday, April 13th. A small mandap canopy was erected opposite Meher Baba's room, and many followers from Poona and Ahmednagar arrived. Khan Sahib under Faradun and Abdur Rahman arranged to bring a famous bhajan singer named Bikoya. The mandali in Mehrabad had been ordered to observe a 24-hour fast from the 12th of April. For 2 hours, a program of bhajan singing was held, and afterwards, Bikoyas recited many stories about Ram. A simple meal of rice and dal was served. Afterward, the mandali were engaged in filling water pots, cleaning vessels, and preparing enough food to feed 1,000 people for the next day. In the evening, the essential message was, the perfect master is God in human form. One should think twice before being in the company of a perfect master. And once one has joined and stayed with him, one should completely surrender to him for the rest of one's life. He then concluded with statements about Mehrabad. Once I settle here, the atmosphere of this place will be greatly heightened spiritually and materially. I have a great mission to perform in my life for the benefit of humanity, the outcome of which will be observed in the near future. At 7.
At 7 in the evening, a kirtan program of stories of God, accompanied by song and music, was delivered by a Hindu kirtan singer. The singing lasted until late in the night. On the morning of April 14, Baba hastened out of the post office building, shouting to the mandali, I couldn't sleep last night. I couldn't sleep for a particular reason. He then gathered the mandali and explained, Kundiram asked me for train fare to return to Poona. His mother is ill, so I gave him money. But now I am making this rule. I will never give a pai, 1 cent, to anyone, nor will I ask anyone else to give money for any such reason. If anyone's relative is seriously ill, he can go on foot. But if he does otherwise, at anyone's expense, he is no longer mine. And that person will be considered to have left me. So whoever wants to be relieved of my company should say here and now, and I will furnish his return journey to his respective place and set him free. In response, all agreed to stay with Baba according to his conditions, and Baba calmed as the matter was settled. On the same day at 11 a.m., Bandara, mass feeding, started and continued until evening. Nearly 1,000 poor and destitute persons were fed. The food was cooked by Chaudhry and other mandali's assistants. Rustam Irani brought up the subject that he considered important, which resulted in the meeting of the mandali, and several guests were called. Abdullah Jafar was made the chairman, and, as there was no chair, he was given a bucket to sit on. Well, that's usually how things began. Listen to this. The others sat around him on the ground. Rustam proposed that since Mehr Baba was recognized as the spiritual chargeman of Hazrat Babajan and Upazni Maharaj, he should have a separate symbol representing his position. Some proposed wearing a different shirt, a distinctive cap, or some other form of dress. At this point, Ghani found fault with the chairman, Bucket Man, as he sarcastically called him.
What did you call it?
Bucket Man.
The Robert's rules, probably.
Yeah. And Abdullah was deposed. Ghani was then made chairman and given the Gamela part to sit down. The discussion focused on a proposal to have a symbol to which most objected. Baba too did not like the idea and said, "We are not a society," he concluded. "Any mark of distinction would rob us of our independence and will prove a binding to restrict our minds." Therefore, the proposal was thrown out and the meeting ended. But due to some laxness on the part of both chairmen, Baba made Abdullah and Ghani hold their ears and do 3 deep knee bends while the others laughed. Should I keep going? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. A meeting was called the following afternoon of April 15th to suggest a name for Meher Baba's newly built room. He suggested the name Jopti, simply meaning the hut, which all seemed to like, and so this one-room hut built for the Lord was accordingly christened. It was also referred to as Agra Kuti, the first hut, to name the 3 animals that were brought to Meherabad. Meher's mother, Daulat, had presented Baba with a white horse. This was the same horse which had belonged to Mehera when she was living in Poona. A white dog also been procured. During the discussion, it was decided that the horse would be called Sufi, the bullock Saint, and the dog Sadhu. In the afternoon, all the guests who had come for Ram's birthday departed for Meherabad for their respective homes. Baba spent the evening singing bhajans with Adi, and afterwards discussed 2 types of muktas, liberated or realized human beings. Here follows the discourse. You want me to go?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. There are 2 kinds of mukti, liberation. One is Vide Mukti, the other is Janma Mukti. King Janak, father of Sita, Ram's wife, was a Vide Mukta, which means he was not in the least affected by any outward situation. He also had no feeling sensations regarding his body. Janak placed one foot in burning fire and the other in icy cold water and did not feel either. Sai Baba of Shirdi was also a Vidya Mukta. It is said that Sai would often use his bare hands as a ladle while serving a boiling dish of food. The deepest meaning of Janma Mukta is to remain emancipated from birth, like Ram, Krishna or Christ. The Vidya Mukta has one disadvantage. He cannot take upon himself the suffering of another. Suppose you have a severe headache. To relieve you of it, a sadhu must suffer the same amount of agony. He must have a similar headache. But when a Vidya Mukta has no outward feelings, how can he free anyone from a headache? How can he free anyone from anything when he does not feel pain? How can he suffer for another being when he is unconscious of physical suffering? Adi then asked how much a being could be called a perfect master. Adi then asked how such a being could be called a perfect master when he is not able to suffer for others. Baba replied, he can take upon himself the suffering of others, but in small portions. The conversation then turned to types of spiritually advanced souls, or Mahapurushas, who are traversing the spiritual planes, realize God, and become perfect. Meher Baba explained, the game of Atya Patya was played many centuries ago in India by rishis, ascetics, and munis, silent recluses, who invented the game to represent spirituality. The middle line, extending vertically end to end, represents Maya, and the other straight line represents lust, anger, greed, etc. One type of Mahapurush, who goes beyond lust, anger, and greed, crosses over to the next side, meaning he realizes God and stays drowned in infinity. The type of realized person is of no direct help to others, except one, in gaining that which he has gained, he known as the Brahmibhut or Matsu. Another type of Mahapurush is he who, crossing through all the lines, reaches the other side and returns to the original starting point, passing through all the lines once more. This going back is for others. So this one who returns is called a Sadguru, or Kutu, who in the twinkling of an eye can take others to the goal. Thus, after emancipating himself from Maya, a perfect master has again to involve himself in Maya to release others. As Swami Vivekananda says, he is the real Guru who brings himself down to the level of his disciples. For example, suppose a pearl is lying hidden under a heap of trash. To take it out, the sweeper has to thrust his hand in the dirt. Likewise, the Sadguru has to be enmeshed in the dirt of Maya, but he is never soiled by it. Nothing can stick to him. Rosalie?
Wait, I'm going to have to catch that.
Okay, why don't you keep...
Go ahead.
Okay. The physical labor continued the next day. The men repaired the bathrooms opposite the mess hall. One morning, Baba found Padri and Ramju chatting idly for a few moments. Upset with them, narrowly missing him, he then rebuked both men soundly and told them to stop working. However, they resumed their work after a while. Later, in front of some of the other men, Padri showed his blistered palms to Baba, who remarked, "You people swear you are ready to give up your life for me, but blisters make you complain. This is not even the beginning of giving up your life, yet you whimper and cry. It is a sin to complain in this path where, for years on end, the body is cut up bit by bit, remaining wounded until it gives up the ghost. Seal your lips and let me kill you slowly, inch by inch. Bravery lies in this, not in showing me the blisters on your palms." Man, that is heavy. I mean, he is saying here, seal your lips and let me kill you slowly, inch by inch. Bravery lies in this, not in showing me the blisters on your palms.
God, you know, Rosalie, you were right. If those people would have came tonight,
Yeah.
I don't think they would because that is some very personal stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
man.
for a Baba lover, you know.
I mean,
Yeah.
God, because people misinterpret that, you know. What is it? Let
but
me
also
kill
it's
you inch by inch.
Yeah.
But he also says here, you know, you whimper. It's a sin to complain in this path where, for years on end, the body is cut up bit by bit, remaining wounded until it gives up the ghost. I mean, he's just saying, ain't no mercy here. You know? Because even at the beginning there, he was saying to this guy, don't everybody come ask you for money. If you want to go walk, and you're out. You know what I mean? If you want to be here.
Yeah.
That's right. In other words, if you want to be here, you're with me, or if you're not,
Yeah.
I'll pay your way home.
Yeah. You know, he says, make your choice now. You know, it's just amazing how charismatic he was. Because, I mean, but maybe they knew how fortunate they were. I mean, if we had been around Baba
The thing is,
then,
though, when you're that young, you're so restless with your nature. It's tough to be that committed. They had.
But look at these guys. I mean, look at Padri here, man. Padri,
Oh, Padri.
you know, he blistered hands and he went through it, man.